that even this particular app that I'm using to be able to bring this video to you are also in a place of power and control. And if you have been on the journey of seeking truth and speaking truth for the last 3 years, then you will know when I say social media is also governed and controlled. That's what their aim is. Everyone thought that the launch of Facebook was the most amazing step forward in being able to keep in contact with people that we're not nearby to. Little did they realise there was a far more sinister agenda behind the creation of social media, such as Fbook, Egram. I'm not going to name them because of the algorithms and the way that the closure on the right to use your voice, the right to express, the right to be able to question, all of that has changed in this last few years. So some of the time you may have to use your mind to figure out what it is. But I promise, given that I am not a cryptic crossword champion and I'm not a good puzzle champion, well, I'm not a puzzle champion, then it's not going to be too difficult for you to figure it out. As we come to the close of 2022, some people may be breathing a sigh of relief and thinking, oh, thank God that's over. And some may just be like, oh, man, what? It was just another year. Well, we know where that attitude and where that lack of awareness is. And that's fine. That's where you are in your life. That's fine. That's where you choose to be. And after all, we do have choices. We've always had choices. And across the board, forever and a day, our choices carry outcomes, consequences, results. There's nothing new in that, right? So let's have a look at 2022. I'm going to begin in home territory, which is WA, Australia, and then we'll kind of look around a little bit of Australia, because everything that goes on here flows across to WA, or vice versa. It goes here and it flows the other way. Although we have seen in the last couple of years that there is a particular man in power in a state known as Victoria in Australia, who seems to be the leading wizard and brings his wizardry forward, and the other so-called assigned premiers of the states and territories sit back and watch how the people in his particular state respond to the things that he brings out, and then they follow suit. So they're all like a little circus within themselves. They go, your turn, your turn, and they pass the parcel around and, have a bit of a laugh and see what's going on. So 2022 came off the back of some really serious changes to the Australian way of life, and globally, I'm not for 1 minute forgetting people outside of Australia. Not for 1 minute. There is so much that took place that has affected everybody in some way, shape or form, unless you're one of the meh people, and one of the people who are extremely compliant and just believe that, the government looks after you, the government is there to take care of you. And that's fine. If that's where you sit, that's fine. I am so very, very grateful to the people that I have come to know over these last few years, a couple of years in particular, who are truth speakers and truth seekers who go out and really find out what's going on. And I'm so grateful for the new friendships, incredible people that I have had the privilege of spending time with and getting to know, including economists, microbiologists, cancer researchers, physicists, theologists, um, all sorts, all of those, so many people. And it's been an incredible journey. And for that, I'm really grateful. As for a particular person who carries a title in the state of Western Australia, the title under the Australian government is Premier of a state, but he's been donned a couple of other titles which are really far more suitable. Lucky for him, his name's McGowan, so it's Malgowan, because he's become a dictator, and he's held that position extremely well over the last few years. Some of the things that came off the back of 2021 was, the incredibly unlawful mandates that came in and saw segregation, discrimination, lockouts, people being locked out of ordinary everyday life activities, taking kids to the zoo, even kids being able to go to school. And how funny, those that weren't all whacked up weren't allowed to go to school. Those who weren't able to mask it up weren't allowed to go to school. And then the government had the audacity to complain about the children staying home. So, there's some really interesting things that kind of don't add up, but they haven't added up, have they, for quite some time now. So the mandates that came in affected employment, and the government threw the employers under the bus by saying, well, you mandated those little whack-ups for your staff, so whatever happens with your staff out of that, well, that's on your back now. So for those employers who have had people become extremely injured, maybe even passed away, constantly sick, constantly away from work. So there's a huge drain on the workforce across the board. And of course, we have the grand shortage of medical staff, so much so there's actually a lot of action going on this last couple of days in South Australia. And funnily enough, the people have been silenced, gagged. That's the thing of finding out truth and speaking truth. It's a no-no. And yet, as a child, we were always taught, tell the truth. We were taught, don't tell lies. We were taught, stand up for what you believe in. I don't know, those values and things seem to have gone out the window through the government, governing the mind. So those things have gone by the by because you're not allowed to express why you're sick, or how come you suddenly taken ill and you're constantly ill, or that you've had this heart issue that you never had before, but you've only had it since you've been jacked up. So you're not allowed to mention that. And of course, we know that the medical profession across Australia and other countries have been well and truly zipped. And they've allowed that. So I'm not sure where their own values, their own integrity has gone, because they've allowed that. They've stood there and gone, oh, okay, we'll do that. Interesting times. We've seen people lobbying their councils around Western Australia and asking the councils to make their region be a mandate-free region. And when it's looked like it's getting somewhere, oh no, it's nipped in the bud at the last minute. Then we've, of course, seen people not be permitted to go into places if they're not, stuffed up so that they've got all their face covered up. Now, once upon a time, you weren't allowed to go into a bank if your face couldn't be seen, but oh no, not now. You've got to cover up. So, you know, it's really out there, isn't it? You couldn't go into a bank with a helmet on, but you can with a helmet and a mask now. Oh no, no, not the helmet, not the helmet, but you can mask on you. Have your face really covered up. Yeah, nobody wants to see your face. Nope, not even the bank. So, you could have something really interesting in your bag when you go in the bank, and that'd be okay. We've had restaurants and retailers that have locked people out, creating segregation, discrimination. And in among all of this, we've had the most amazing community come together of truth speakers, truth seekers, people who know that there have been tremendous untruths being spoken, far from the truth being spoken, the truth being totally manipulated. We have seen the rise of common law sheriffs and the rise of common law. And at the same time, we've seen a man who has studied the Australian Constitution be arrested on a false charge, but is still to this day not allowed to speak because he is on bail, essentially. So he's not allowed to speak because of whatever it is he's being charged with, which happens to be a made up something. It can't be called a law because it's not a law. There's also a man here called Rod Cullerton, by the name of Rod Cullerton, and he has had many police turn up attempting to arrest him throughout the last 2 years, more so this year. And even the Australian Federal Police have not been able to uphold cases against him because they're not actually lawful. And they're also not being conducted in the correct court of law. You see, we have something in Australia called the Australian Constitution. And whilst it is true, it's actually fact, that in 1976, the then Prime Minister, two of them actually, took turns about to sell out the country and to undermine and sneak in what is called the Australia Act. But that was also unlawful. So the Australian Constitution is actually still in play, and it's still very much the people's right. But those who are in corporate law, wear a uniform, drive cars with particular lights and insignia on them, would have you believe that that's not the case. And many people have been able to, through truth seeking and truth speaking, find out that they themselves have the constitutional rights still in play. There's some really interesting things that have gone on this year. There's been some amazing unraveling and exposure even of what is actual fact, which we could call truth, versus word manipulation, untruth. So let's have a look at some of the notes from this year. We've had people come together for rallies. We've had people come together to call out about their beliefs of what's going on not being quite correct. We've had new laws that have been signed in apparently in the middle of the night. I'm not sure how many politicians go into Parliament House in the middle of the night, but we do know of one in particular with just a few of his little minions that go in, and he writes off, that dictator, Mao Gowan, he writes off whatever legislation he wants, and none of his little minions will say boo about it. And so he believes that the West Australian people have just, taken on board whatever it is he wants. One of those legislations that he's written up, and he's not alone, his little mate over in Victoria has done the same thing. So it is a new legislation is what they're calling it, which if you go in and find out about legislation, it's far from a legislation, but it's actually the disease and infection control. So they now have this new thing in place where a non-medical person, a non-political person, so just a person off the street, can go into your home, a public servant that's been appointed, can break into your home, remove your property, remove you without cause, without reason, and without proof. Take your property, put you into a quarantine centre, and forcefully apply a medical procedure. Opens you up to some grave concerns to your well-being and your welfare. Another thing that has just come up in the last few weeks is yet another of his swipe of the pen, as he's known for, whereby a man, a grown man of any age, can decide at any moment that he no longer wishes to be identify as a man, but he wants to identify as a woman. And he can do that at the strike of his own pen, and he can then go into any female change room, any female shop. He can play any female sport. He can go into any female public toilet, anything. And if you can't put two and two together out of that and see how incredibly dangerous that is for women's safety, little girls, children's safety, then I don't know which planet you are from, because there is nothing that is divinely right about any of that, any of it. Suddenly deciding that you don't want to be that gender. And this dictator has just written it up overnight, as he does. What else have we had in 2022? Well, we've had the loss of a lot of very fit and very healthy sports stars. I don't know how you get to be a star as a sporting person, but that's the culture, right? And they just drop. And we can't say the other word because of the censorship. So they do, you know what I mean? They just drop and they don't get up. So if you don't get up, where are you gone? Well, I guess you're gone. So we've had a lot of those. And the word sudden was being applied. There you go. Sudden, suddenly there, suddenly not. It was suddenly dead. You're not allowed to say that anymore. Always a little bit more of that play on words, a little bit more of that mess around with words. You know, many years ago, a thing called NLP came into play, and that was the beginning. And so many people aren't able to see neuro-linguistic programming. And yet here we are seeing neuro-linguistic programming being applied to our everyday speech so that we cannot use certain words. So there is another term. We have medical incident, medical episodes, and the number of people having these medical episodes, particularly pericarditis, myocarditis, huge, gone through the roof. Massive clotting issue in people that have been very young, very fit, very healthy. Only happening this year in great volumes of numbers. One of the events that I covered this year that I was very, very proud to cover, although it was very heart-wrenching, was the nurses. The nurses of ethics is what I call them. And those are the nurses who said, no, we will not participate in this horrendous lie. We will not participate in the government control and taking people's choice to bodily autonomy, people's choice to their own health away. Not only that, but implementing procedures that had not been clinically trialed, clinically proven. So these are nurses of ethics, and it was an incredibly sad day to stand with them and see them all put their uniforms on the ground outside of what's called Dumas House, but we nickname it Dumbass House. That's where all the politicians sit to make great decisions on behalf of the people of Western Australia. And that includes the Dumbass Minister for Education, who insisted that little children should be masked up in their yards at school while playing. And here's the biggest joke of all: yoga. Yoga being done in school classrooms for the children to help them feel calm and safe. But we'll make sure that they're all covered up. And the joke about that is yoga is all about the breath. Yoga is all about, but I shouldn't say it's all about. The foundation of yoga is the incredible power of the breath and the healing power of the breath. So here we have these non-yoga teachers, not in the least bit qualified, doing yoga in class with the asana for the children. Truly, if you can't see your way past that either, then I don't know which planet you're from. So what else have we got here? Well, it really is very sad to find that the division of people through skin color and preference is well and truly alive. Whether or not this application will allow the word racism, whether or not YouTube will allow the word racism, I guess we'll see once we see how long this stays up for. But there was a movement put forward for there to be what's called the Indigenous Voice of Australia. And it was to provide the mechanics. It was to be a structure, mechanical structure, whatever you want to call it, stupid wording anyway, to actually give the Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia a voice for the needs of their community around the country, to give that voice to Parliament. Now, I actually sat in on a meeting with a senator by the name of Pauline Hanson and a acclaimed Professor Zimmerman here in Perth, and listened to what I could only express as the most racist speeches I have ever heard in my life. It was appalling to hear the outright untruth, lies being spoken by both. The thing about the Indigenous voice in Parliament, the question I ask is, why are you so afraid? What do you think after all these years that the minority, which is what the Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders are to this day, the minority, you really think that they could possibly do you any harm in your Parliament? You really think that by them having a voice, which it won't be, we all know that, you really think that that's going to be a problem for you? I would love to use your own words, Pauline Hanson. Please explain. It is absolutely ridiculous to see her make the trek across to Western Australia to try and win votes and turn people against each other. And that's exactly what the aim of her presentation was. The Indigenous voice is simply about them being able to have policy and legislation that will not impact their people and country and their way of life. But it's too late, right? It's too late. We see the likes of Rio Tinto and BHP blowing up sacred sites and then saying, oh, whoops. The irony of that is that Rio Tinto makes a big fuss about doing cultural awareness. You know, when you go to work for them, you have to sit through this cultural awareness. And the joke is, it's all a big farce, because as we saw, they have no qualms in blowing up sacred sites and particularly important land sites to the native people of the areas where they are mining millions of tons of iron ore, which goes directly to China and which we buy back as steel. We did have our own steel manufacturing plants in Australia, which employed thousands of Australian people. But when Mr. Hawke and Mr. Keating and Gough Whitlam, previous Prime Ministers of Australia, decided to get together and sell off Australia, that just became, null and void. So all those steel manufacturing industries were shut down. Thousands of people lost their jobs, no different to, let's no longer make cars here in Australia. Thousands of people lost their jobs. Par for the course, isn't it? It's just what they do. And what do the Australian people do? This is my biggest question about all of this. What do the Australian people do? Crickets. That's pretty much it. So over this last few years, I have been really inspired and my heart's been lifted by the number of people I have met who do not just go crickets. I have been incredibly inspired and uplifted by meeting or through meeting these amazing people who look for truth, who speak truth, who hold ethics, morals, values for humanity as their absolute foundation for their way of life and for what they want for their children of tomorrow. I am so pleased to have met so many of you, and you know who you are. You are the champions. You are the people who are the salt of the earth all around the world, because I'm also talking to every one of you around the world who are speakers of truth, seekers of truth, who have morals, who have ethics, who know that this gender swapping, this, changing from one gender to another or no gender and all the rest of it, you know where that comes from, you know what it's about, and you speak out. There are not crickets around you. For that, I'm grateful. And while I'm talking about crickets, of course, you've been duped. Not you wonderful people that are truth seekers and truth speakers, but the meh people who think that eating crickets, eating insects that's really cool because it's fantastic protein. Oh my, that's where I just have to roll my eyes and go meh myself, because nothing could be more stupid. But that's what's coming, along with a little bit more of the fundemic, from the likes of Mao dictator Gowan and his little team of minions. We'll see what fun they have in store for us. And of course, he appointed, not actually his right to appoint, it's so hard to even say the title because it's not correct, but it's the Governor of Western Australia. So, Mao dictator appointed Mr. Dawson, who was the police commissioner, the very same police commissioner who gagged his extremely badly injured officers after they did what he asked and rolled up and whack it up. And he gagged them. So he's now the governor. Isn't that something special? So that's 2020. But on the flip side, on the upside, wow, there's some incredibly strong, good-hearted, amazing humans that I have had the pleasure of becoming friends with this year, getting to know this year. Absolutely brilliant. Going on tour with them, been amazing. Meeting people all over Australia, beautiful humans who see the light and who see what all this is really about. And it's been a delight, an absolute delight. So signing off for 2020, Fearless Prophet. I guess we'll be back to see what unravels in 2023. There are some other bits and pieces from 2022, and I might do some snippet, a bit of reflection here and there. But for now, signing off and wishing you the very best new year, and hope that you leave a lot of what took place this year, you leave it behind, take with you all of the wonders. To all families who've lost loved ones, and that includes our own family, I send my love, send my heart to you. To those who rolled up and are no longer here because of that, may you be in the greatest place of the divine light. And may you also bring back the messages of truth. That'd be wonderful. So till next time, bye for now.